All right, our goal today is to kind of reinforce and practice some of the reading skills we were working on with relation to the readings that we have this week. Because there's a lot of readings this week, probably the most of any week this semester, you'd be glad to hear, is I want to kind of make sure that we've gotten what we wanted to get over them, and also set up a framework that you can kind of use these classes to check your own reading and use, like, ideally take notes on the reading before you get to class, and then use the class to take further notes. And I have no problem with you putting your reading notes from, like, putting notes that you take in class alongside your reading notes to add to the word count and add to the time that you're spending doing those. So that being said, we're going to get going over Lamott and then Murray and Bitzer to see kind of what these authors have to offer us and why I'm giving them to you now. I also wanted to say that I'm going to give you an extension on Forum 2. It's changed, instead of being due on Friday before class, or most forums are, because this one is a little more challenging and I'd like to have a little bit of discussion about the philosophy behind this. I'm giving us an extension until Saturday at midnight. If you want to get it done sooner than that, that's fine. I was going to do it on Friday, but since some of us might just have more time over the break, I thought that would be easier for you. I also want to let you know that you are eligible for extra credit, especially to make up for forums that you missed, by doing any independent reading or research that you're interested in, preferably connected to something we're doing in the course. But since this course is about reading and processing information and getting better at reading and writing, if you're into or researching something anyway, not necessarily for another class, but for your own purposes, and you share that reading and writing with me, I will give you some credit back on that. So you can just email me that. I intentionally have no guidelines for that extra credit. It should be your own self-directed, authentic learning. Okay, we've got 3 authors. The first 2 are meant to be taken together, Lamott and Murray. And then Bitzer is the start of our rhetorical theory, which is challenging, I think, if you tried to get into that. So what I was hoping to have us do is go over what the main ideas that Lamott would have us understand about writing and shitty first drafts. What was she trying to get us to see, and how, or what's the practical takeaway? Why would I have us read this?
What I gathered from it is just that she's trying to explain that not only students are the people that have to go through multiple drafts in order to find what they're looking for, but that everybody goes through that, especially if they want to be a good writer. So going through multiple drafts, there's nothing wrong with that. It just helps you get more concise every single time, and that starting off pretty awful can usually lead to something really well written.
Yes, really, that's
For some
great.
reason I paused in between those
No,
two.
that's
I don't know why.
really, that's fine. That's really smart. You're speaking better than I'm speaking. Each time helps you get more concise. I really like that you said that. And that she says all good writing starts, I think, with terrible first efforts. Great. Anybody else take something else from this? That's pretty much it. There's a couple of other corollaries that I think, like in the category of why would I want you to read this at this point of the semester, or what benefit do we get from this? I see students beating themselves up because they don't think their drafts are that good, or that it's hard to get your words down on paper. And I don't think that's necessarily that helpful, that everyone writes bad drafts. I also think This is one of my fascinations with everything, but how the play of mindset, how we approach something changes what we get out of it. I've noticed this, like, especially if I'm reading 70 forum posts, my mindset's really going to affect how I approach that. If I'm reading, my mindset affects it. So I think realizing how mindset can affect our performance, particularly like negative voices in our head that she suggests that, I don't know if you guys got that to that point in the article, but when you get the voices that are telling you that it's not good or that so on and so forth, that you can just like put them in a jar and turn the volume all the way down or shoot them. Um, but I guess one of the points that I wanted to kind of get through with this is that, um, perfectionism can be an enemy of the good. Or perfect is an enemy of the good. Or good enough. For some readers, I think maybe for high achievers, this is a more important lesson, but maybe not. Cool. In terms of her writing, this article was probably pretty hard to skim. And the fun, like her language was really kind of fun. So hopefully you did get time to read that one. Anything else from this chapter, from this reading that was worth mentioning? There's one other thing I'm hoping that we got out of it.
So it's not necessarily something that I got out of it, but it's something I want to be able to apply to my own writing, and it's
Yes.
the up-down dental drafts. I really
There we
liked
go.
that
Yes.
because I'm really bad about trying to do everything at once when I'm going through my work. So the idea of the up-down dental drafts was really interesting to me.
Yep, that was what I was hoping that we would get. Updraft is, and actually it starts with the downdraft, right? Is the first draft? Am I getting that right? Hopefully. Where you're just getting everything down. So you're trying to get as much as possible down. This is the kind of the shitty first draft. Am I getting this right? I feel like I'm mixing this up. And then the updraft is fixing everything up, which I thought was interesting, that one of the things that you do in order to fix up your writing is taking out everything that you don't need. So a good fixing the draft up is about taking out what you don't need. She says that usually is about her first draft is maybe twice as long as it should be. It has a boring beginning, stupefying description, lots of quotes from her humored friends that seemed interesting at the time, but weren't actually. And then she says she'd go through it with a colored pen and take out everything I possibly could. And then the dental draft, which is maybe a weird metaphor, but it seems like it worked for you, is like your fine-toothed comb draft, where you're just editing, fixing everything up, editing each sentence if you can. Now, obviously, like, you wouldn't need to go into this much detail for any piece of writing, but if you're writing, again, something that you really care about or something that is important, I think these different drafts are significant. I don't know if you noticed that she said when she gets her down draft, she likes to go to the restaurant that she's reviewing with her witty or fun friends in tow, and that they have a drink and she just writes down everything that they say. I had a student a few semesters be like, "Oh yeah, that's why they tell you just to, draft drunk and edit sober." And I was like, oh, I hadn't heard that before, and I don't know that I can condone that, but I actually do think that if you can be buzzed perhaps, or have a little bit of alcohol in your system to silence the voices in your head that usually inhibit you and tell you that what you're doing isn't very good. So which those voices can be really helpful, right? That's kind of, anyway, that might be an interesting point. I don't know if people have experimented with writing under the influence to see if it's easier or more difficult. It seems to me that it's easier to get things down, but harder to actually decide whether or not what you're doing is any good. So that's why kind of, you know, looking at it under a different mindset or a different mental standpoint is helpful. Cool. Excellent. Well done. Any other comments or questions on that one? Okay, so in the next one, the Maker's Eye, Murray, we are on page 115. I wanted to draw attention to his paragraph structure and how the writing looks. And I found this article helpful to give us an idea of how to really focus in on the revision stage. And we should make sure in any of these that we define what the key terms are, here being the Maker's Eye. So what was the main point of Murray? What was he trying to get? What's the big idea here? What is the Maker's Eye? That writers need to actually develop a special kind of reading skill to go over their work. What I really love about this piece is it really shows that good writing is really about good reading, where you're able to read your own work with a kind of critical eye to how your work is functioning. Some of the key parts that I thought were most important if you're testing how well you read this is the order of revision, so that we have kind of like what an author can pay attention to when they revise, what a writer pays attention to when they revise. Did anybody get this? Did we get a chance to read this? I know this was a lot of reading this week.
I was able to read part of it. I realized that I got the wrong version of the textbook, so I had to contact a friend and figure out what all I was missing. But I was only able to read part of it by the time I was able to find the actual article online.
That's okay. And I did just want to, I imagine that this was, this is a lot. So I wanted to give this, okay, so in order, a reviser pays attention to 1, the information. And so we can basically question whether or not the information we're providing is good. And then 2, what the audience is needing. Now this is interesting because this parallels the order that the CSU composition program advocates for. If you take information to be the purpose of any bit of communication. And then we could look at the form that the writing takes, though I'm actually going to delete this because we pretty much know what the form the writing takes is in college, or at least that's dictated to us like an essay or something. What we then can pay attention to is the structure. How is it laid out? This could also be This is like the outline or organization. And then we're looking at the development, which is also, we could look at is a certain kind of information where we're developing our ideas. Oops. And then the proportion, he says, is basically if I look at a piece of writing and I see that the intro is really long and then it's a short first reason and then a longer second reason and then a short third reason and then a really short conclusion, I can kind of see maybe actually I can make the intro shorter, the second paragraph longer, third paragraph shorter, the fourth paragraph a little bit longer, the conclusion a little bit longer, and now it has a nice feel of proportion among the different pieces. And then the last thing to pay attention to is voice. Okay, here's why I wanted us to get this list. I think a lot of students think about their voice or are really preoccupied with their voice in writing because they want to sound good. And honestly, I was super impressed with people's voice in the first forum. We're writing really well in terms of the writing itself at a sentence voice level. That being said, the most important thing to pay attention to in any situation is whether or not you're giving the audience the information that it needs. And this is where the magic happens. This is number 1 and 2, the information and audience. When you can deliver what an audience is looking for and know the information that an audience is looking for, anticipate their questions and deliver on those questions, that's the difference really between getting the job and not, in all honesty. If I'm reading a cover letter, I'm less concerned about the person's voice, and I'm even less concerned about the structure or outline, although that gets in my head how easy it is to read. I really want to know the info. What do you have to offer? What skills can you bring to the table? Are you going to be a good hire for us? This list kind of makes sense. The other reason why I wanted to slow down on this list is that one of the things I could see improving on our discussion forum posts, for the most part, not our posts, but in our response to our peers, is that not a lot of us have the confidence, I think, to give good constructive critiques. And this is one way to think about that. You could say something like, I really liked your point about having to fight for education. I wonder what that fighting looks like. Can you provide more information and develop that idea? As an example. Or you could say, for the audience, our instructor really likes you to use short quotes from the text. And he does that thing about Emerson's self-reliance. Maybe you could bring that in. And proportion might be like, or organization, hey, I would, you can use shorter paragraphs because our instructor really likes short paragraphs with nice topic sentences. Those kinds of things. So I hope as you get better at revising your own work, you get better at revising your peers' work. As you get better at revising your peers' work, you get better at revising your own work. And then that's really where I hope you're going to see growth as a writer this semester. But definitely, if you take these notes seriously, at least like these ideas as a structure on how to improve your writing and just keep working on it, you're going to be leagues ahead of your peers that don't do that, in my opinion, especially because you're going to be able to give the audience the information that they need, which is going to help them make the decisions that you'd like them to make. Okay, the other thing I thought was interesting in here that I liked to have in my notes is that he talks about that a good reader is always interfacing between the biggest picture of the writing and the smallest details. So I can kind of toggle between, here's a small detail, how does it fit into the big picture? Should I adjust my big picture for that small detail, and so on and so forth? So at the big level, we have the entire essay. So the whole essay is the biggest level. And at the smallest level, we have a single word. So a good reader is going to be able to kind of constantly kind of zoom in and zoom out and do that a lot. So I'm zooming out, seeing where this fits, and now this seems important, I'm zooming in. I'm zooming out, I'm zooming in. So from the whole essay to the next piece is sections, no, paragraphs. And then sentences, and then phrases, the building blocks of sentences. So I really like this idea of like telescoping, of like big picture, here's what's going on, now I need to pay attention. Big picture, pay attention. Cool? Okay, let me see how this is a helpful framework to revise your work, hopefully. And do we see that in order to be a better writer, you're basically developing the skills as readers of your own work to identify really what you can take out? Any questions? We're flying. That's the benefit of only having 4 people in a class, I guess. I've got a question. You want us to take out everything we don't need, but how do we do that if I need to like write, I don't know, 300 words on something? If I take out everything I don't need, I'm only going to be left with like 100 words. So what do you want me to do then?
Write 600 words.
Brilliant. That's not what I was going to say, but I like that answer better. Yeah, but I mean, I guess it kind of is. If you add more in, if you take everything out and you only have 100 words left, that means that you only have 100 good words. So the best thing you can do is just go back to the source text, pull out more quotes, pull out more ideas, define the author's key terms. And, so you notice my notes here are, what is the maker's eye? Well, it's a special kind of reading skill to go over their work, because writing is about good reading. Well, what's the special kind of reading skill? Well, it's this. So it's kind of a variation of the annoying child game. I don't know if we've heard of this before, but you basically just ask, why? And here we're going, what is this? What is this? What is this? What is this? Great. Other questions? Then, without further ado, are you ready to Bitzer? Here we go. I hope did we try to get into this? If the people are here, have we tried to start reading this yet? Can I get a thumb? No? Thumbs down, I haven't. Thumbs up, I have. Okay, difficult reading to get into. Partially because where and when was this published? Oh boy. The rhetorical situation. From a journal called Philosophy and Rhetoric. From 1968. Oops, not exactly bedside reading. Okay, there's 4 sections in this reading. So what I want to do is practice my reading skill here. It's on page 23 of the text. And if I look first, there is no, oh, there's a heading. There's a Roman numeral 1 on page 3. There's a Roman numeral 2, a Roman numeral 3. Roman numeral 3 has a list of 5, 6 things under it, and then a Roman numeral 4. Okay, well, that doesn't really help me very much. There's like an intro, and then Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, Roman numeral 3, and Roman numeral 4. Based on this, where would we guess the most important information is? And I can see that Roman numeral 4 is actually really short. So that is the conclusion, looks like, which is also kind of the summary of his points. So that's where I'm going to start. I'm not really sure what's going on in any of these other sections. I started trying to read some of it in one, but honestly, I could not get a grip on what was going on. So I'm actually going to skip to the conclusion summary and read that first. Let's see what we got. He says, in the best of all possible worlds, there would be communication perhaps, but no rhetoric, since exigences would not arise. I have no idea what exigence is. I'm already confused. In our real world, however, rhetorical exigencies abound. The world really invites change, change conceived and affected by human agents who quite properly address a mediating audience. Mediating audience, agents of change. So far, I have no idea what he's talking about. The practical justification of rhetoric is analogous to that of scientific inquiry, okay, compared to science. I'm gonna make a note of that later. The world presents objects to be known, puzzles to be resolved, complexities to be understood, hence the practical need for scientific inquiry and discourse. Similarly, the world presents imperfections to be modified by means of discourse, hence the practical need for rhetorical investigation and discourse. So he uses the comparison to science, a way of understanding reality. Rhetoric is a way of understanding communication. And he says something, the world presents imperfections to be modified. As a discipline, scientific method is justified philosophically insofar as it provides principles, concepts, and procedures by which we come to know reality. Similarly, so I got that, rhetoric as a discipline is justified philosophically insofar as it provides the principles, concepts, and procedures by which we effect valuable changes in reality. Awesome.
So is this a common strategy if you like don't understand something to go to the back of the book and like read like the last chapter?
If, and why I'm modeling this is it gives you an idea of what the person's doing, and it also lets you know what you don't understand. So you're like, okay, I kind of get the big picture, but I still don't understand what he means by exigencies. I don't really know, these seem important, but I really don't understand them. I like this idea of affecting valuable changes in reality, and I guess that's kind of like persuasion. But in an article like this, when I scanned it and I didn't get any foothold in the intro, those paragraphs seemed like I couldn't really get it. I didn't know what was going on in any of these. Actually, the end of section 1 had a nice list that I'm going to go back and read now. And 2, I wasn't really sure what was going on. And 3 has the long list. So I didn't really get any traction on the headings here. So I'm just trying to find my quickest way into this reading. And I guessed that it was the last section because it was so short. So again, this is an example of like, I'm trying to zoom out to see the whole piece, which this is really hard to do on this piece because he doesn't give us much. There's no titles to his headings or anything. And then I'm going to zoom in on these little small details. Okay. Good. Other questions?
Because you were an editor on this book, right? How'd you guys choose these articles? Like, if you didn't read them before, like what made you want to choose this?
Oh no, I'm just pretending I haven't read this before. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I'm performing.
Oh, I see. All right, you're a good performer.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I'm trying to mimic a way of reading that students might not have practice in, which is
Okay.
skipping around, identifying what's most important, trying to figure out what's most important, and then defining the key terms.
Okay.
So I'm going to just skip back, and I actually landed on section 2, and I'm going to read the first sentence of that. It says, "Let us now amplify the nature of the situation by providing a formal definition and examining its constituents." Well, that's a big, long way of saying, let's define what we're talking about. So I'm putting a star next to this, and I'm slowing way down because this seems like it's super important. And you can see, I wonder if you can see how I should probably make a video of this so you can see what my annotations look like. I put a box around this because it's important. I put a mark in here that he's basically saying what's going on. Is that backwards to you or right side?
It's right side.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm putting boxes around the key terms here, and then I have some notes where I'm basically, I can't read what that says. What did I say?
So we like take a picture of that and turn that in as our notes too, as part of our notes.
Yeah. Yep.
Hear about.
Yep. So in section 2, we get a definition of the features of a rhetorical situation. And number 1 was if I go into this, at the end of number 1, he says, hence, to say that rhetoric is situational means, hence, or therefore, or in conclusion, are all ways of signifying a conclusion, which means I'm guessing I could get what he's meaning in section 1 by the list at the very end of section 1. So Nick, this is a good answer to your other question. Readers or writers, especially in academic situations, will summarize their main points at the end of each section. So if you could identify where in the writing is the most important section and then focus your energy there, you're going to be more efficient in reading something that's challenging. So the end of this section, he goes over all of what it means. It then has a nice list of what it means that rhetoric is situational. And as a reader, I am still trying to understand what the frack this means. That's the title of the essay. So I know that's important. I kind of get what this means, but I don't know what he means by it. So I know what I'm looking for, and I'm going to start finding it. So my question I'm asking in the text is, you say that rhetoric is situational. What do you mean by that? And then now I'm actually ready to actually dive in. So the intro on this, and what often happens in academic writing, is a justification. Whoops. Intro is a justification for why this article exists, like why he needs to write it, which honestly I'm least interested in as a student reader right now. I am more interested in figuring out what this is. Okay, so this, I wanted to show that in your notes, it's awesome to kind of try to lay out what a reader is doing, because you can kind of then mimic and then organize your notes accordingly. And we have 3 major definitions. So in section 2, he goes over, if I just look at the topic sentences, the second paragraph says, an exigence is an imperfection marked by urgency. It is a defect, an obstacle, something to be waiting to be done, a thing which is other than it should be. That's helpful. I marked that and underlined that. Next paragraph. In any rhetorical situation, there will be at least one controlling exigence which functions as the organizing principle. It specifies the audience to be addressed and the change to be effected. Okay. Next paragraph. The second constituent is audience. So when I saw this, I actually put a mark and the number 2 to help me read this and put a box around audience so that I'm telling myself that this is the paragraph about audience. Next topic sentence. Neither scientific nor poetic discourse requires an audience in the same sense. So more on audience. I didn't underline anything there because it's not the same. Then besides exigence and audience, next paragraph, every rhetorical situation contains a set of constraints made up of persons, events, and objects and relations, which are parts of the situation because they have the power to constrain decision and action needed to modify the exigence. Section 3 on constraints. And then, so now I know, according to the intro, that there are 3 main features of the rhetorical situation. Exigence, audience, and constraints. And then I'm going to define these the way he defines them. Number 1, an exigence is an imperfection marked by urgency. I'm going to quote him, Bitzer 23. It is a problem that needs to be solved. Something needing to be changed. And now I'm getting what he's saying, actually. If communication is about effecting valuable changes in reality, the only time we would need to do that is if there's some imperfection. And now I can think of an example that has this make sense. If I graduate, if I just graduated and I need a place to live and I don't have a job, is there an imperfection marked by urgency?
You got to get a job as fast as you can so that way you can get a house.
So the imperfection is I need a job and it's urgent because I need a place to live. Right?
Yep.
Okay. So then this becomes rhetorical when the audience is someone capable of affecting the change. Capable of effecting, like making an effect, the change needed. So who in our situation is a rhetorical audience that's able to fix this imperfection marked by urgency? Who would I need to communicate to in order to solve my problem?
Well, wouldn't it be like, I'm trying to decide if it's either the employer or it's like internal dialogue of like getting the motivation to go get the job.
But it depends on what your imperfection is. If your imperfection is you don't have any motivation, then yeah, you would be your own audience and you'd be like pep talking yourself into it. But really, but yeah, so that could be, honestly, that's really smart. It could be both. I was going to go with like an employer that's going to give you a job. And then you're going to be communicating to them to try to give you a job. The final piece of this puzzle, and again, he likens this to like a scientific way of approaching this, are the constraints. And these are anything that limit an audience's ability to act and solve the problem. And he gives a really nice long list that might actually be more confusing, but it's going to be important to us. These include, he says, beliefs, attitudes. Generally speaking, when a writer has a long list, it's usually important. Beliefs, attitudes, documents, facts, traditions, images, interests, motives. And then before that, he actually says persons, events, objects, and relations. $30 to $31. Okay. A constraint is anything that limits an audience's ability to act and solve the problem. These constraints could be persons, events, objects, relations, or beliefs, attitudes, documents, facts, traditions, immigrants, interests, and motives. Let's say, okay, Nick, let's say that you like me. And let's say that you are capable of giving me a job. Or no, hold on. Shoot, I'm screwing this up. I need a job, Nick.
All right.
Can you give me a job?
No, because I don't know you. We don't have relations.
Oh yeah, that works. Let's say we did know each other.
All right.
So but are you in a position to give me a job?
No.
Right. So you actually, that's like you actually can't give me a job as much as you would want to.
Right.
That's a sense of constraint.
Okay.
What we're going to learn and what we're going to see and why this is such a powerful theory to approach our communication is a lot of times people want to help, but they can't. And sometimes being a good communicator is giving your audience good reasons to act and change, but also understanding that they may not be able to change. This is what we see, that a lot of communication that goes wrong, particularly in political discourse in America today. People are expecting other people to change things that they are in no position to be able to change. At a personal level, like I'm not going to change my understanding for anybody. And on an institutional level, sorry, we can't do that. This actually is really, if we had time, we would discuss how this relates to the whole argument about whose responsibility it is to keep CSU safe and healthy. Because things get complicated pretty quickly. Okay. That's a good start to your notes with Bitzer. You're going to need to go deeper into them and then see why Vats thinks that Bitzer is just wrong. And that will be next time.
Cool.
Cool. Questions?
All right. Nope. So for Friday, should we get our discussion post done?
I would try to, or at least get it started. You have until Saturday to get it done. But I would get it done before the weekend if it was me. I just wanted to give you extra time in case you wanted it, because I want you to spend some time with this, and it's challenging.
Okay, sweet.
Cool. Thanks for your contributions, Aurora, Nick, and Kate. I'm glad you're here.
Thanks.
Have a great week.
You too.
Any questions? Cool.